I would sit down here and we would do the elections, and then I would flip with somebody. We'd literally get up and flip seats to keep the council meeting going. So we decided to do the vote tonight, but that will take place then in 2023 for the council meeting in January for council leadership. So just to explain that, first of all, I want to say thank you to the council members, my fellow council members, for trusting me this year to be the president of the council. We have done fantastic things. You know, it's just amazing in the midst of emerging out of a pandemic to the things that we've been able to achieve. Mayor and your staff, just tremendous, absolutely amazing job. Continue to transform Fishers, and you know, it's just something that has been a privilege to walk alongside and watch and examine and try to make sure we're making the right decisions with checks and balances. And it's just been incredible. It's, you know, we could go through list after list of things, but we had just to commend the council, my fellow council members. We had a tough agenda this year. One of those was every 10-year doing a redistricting map, and you know how that's a voting the districts, and you know how that can be contentious in our nation. And we had a unanimous bipartisan agreement on the maps, which was amazing. We've got the district that's expanding and the arena coming in, which is fantastic. Now our students are going to be able to graduate and not in Fishers, their ceremonies, and not have to go outside of Fishers. I could go on and on. Mario Andretti, the Andretti racing team, everything else that's happened. So I just want to say thank you to each one of my fellow council members for your hard work, your dedication to our community. And with that, though, I do believe there needs to be a rotation in this. I think that one person sitting in one seat is not good for a community, and there needs to be variety. And so with that, I'm going to put on the floor to nominate John to be president, and Cecilia, who is remote. Is she still on, I hope?
I'm on.
Okay.
I'm
Woo,
on time.
yeah, you there. As vice president for next year for 2023. That's my motion on the table.
And I'll second that.
There's a second. We do need to have a roll call vote. So
I'm sorry,
Go ahead. Yes.
President
Yes,
Zimmerman.
yeah.
First of all, thank you for
Yes.
your leadership. I really appreciate it. It's been another hard year, and you've done a great job.
Thank you.
I'm a by-the-book kind of person, and according to the rules of our procedure for this body, it does say specifically that this vote should be held in January. So I don't know why it's been accelerated, but it does feel like those were the rules that we have established for our body, and I don't know if you want to push on. I don't know why this is happening right now.
It really doesn't matter. We can do either one. It was just simply to make it efficient for when we sit January to not have to get up and us rotate or whoever is voted in to leave. That's literally
My
it.
recommendation would be to stick with our rules, and frankly, I'm speaking selfishly too. Again, I'm a by-the-book kind of person, but also I haven't had an opportunity to speak to the two nominees fully. So I would recommend that we wait until January as noted.
Okay, that's the recommendation, but we have a motion on the table, and we have a second. Any other discussion? Okay, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Todd Zimmerman,
Aye.
John Weingart,
Aye.
Pete Peterson,
Yes.
Cecilia Coble,
Aye.
Brad DeReamer, Selena Stoller, Jocelyn Vare,
I'm saying no just because this was to be conducted in January as our rules say.
Crystal Newman,
Aye.
David Giffel,
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to no announcements. We have presentations. Chief, are you here? You ready to go?
Steve Russa, Chief of Fire and Emergency Services. Tonight's a special night. We honor John Mailing for 30 years of service. John, in all my years, I have never known anyone that does as good a job as John does for our fire department, for our community. So much so that instead of me writing his accolades, he wrote his own. So hold on to your seats. John, why don't you come up here so I can read this in front of... Right next to me, brother. Okay, here goes. In 1988, Captain John Mailing began his firefighting adventure as a volunteer firefighter in Manchester, Connecticut, while working towards his goal of $1 million salary. In 1990, he moved back to his home state of Indiana, to a small town of 8,000 people and 2-lane streets to further his quest for his $1 million salary while still being a volunteer firefighter. In 1992, he finally learned that there is little meaning in $1 million salary without passion. So in December of 1992, he applied for a full-time position with the Fishers Fire Department and was hired on December 2nd, opening the town's second station on New Year's Eve on his first full day of duty. In January of 1993, he learned his second big lesson. Passion doesn't mean a lot either if you can't afford to eat. Fortunately, working 3 jobs over the next 10 years met the eating demand, while his passion to serve the community continued to grow, as did his salary. Joining such a young department gave him opportunities not often found elsewhere. The time of his career put him in a position to be part of the First Club. He was a founding member of MC Acts and the fire crew, for which he co-wrote songs, skits, brought Sparky the fire dog to life for 10 years. He was one of the first rescue divers, technical rescue team members for over 15 years, public information officer, and had some of the best hair on the department, though not for very long. He held the rank of lieutenant, house captain, battalion chief, and is currently captain of the External Affairs Division. He has been recognized by the department for numerous awards and citations, and recognized by the American Legion for his service. He has shaken hands with greats such as Pacers clutch giant Reggie Miller, the cool Henry Winkler, also known as Fonzie, and the most memorable, the people in the community who on their worst day took time to say thank you for being there for them. With nearly 35 years in the fire service, Captain Mailing says he has lived a lifetime of passion for which he is eternally grateful, but is willing to entertain that $1 million salary again, and if any of the new corporations are looking for a slightly used, minimally skilled, tired old firefighter that's good with animals.
I got to see your LinkedIn profile of that. I got to see it.
All kidding aside, this past year, under John's leadership, the External Affairs Division has had 60,000 contacts with Fishers residents, and that does not include the Farmers Market or our Public Safety Day. 27,000 followers on Facebook, 8,000 on Twitter, and over 5 million views in 2022 alone. He asked for $1 per view, but we couldn't fit that in the salary budget. So please join me in congratulating Captain John Mailing on 30 years of service.
Any other presentations, service awards?
I'd just like to come out. John, I want to thank you very much for everything that you've done for Britton Falls. You're always there for us, and they really appreciate it. Chief, don't take it personally, but they know him better than you.
Did we have any other service awards to?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. All right. Moving on to the council committee reports. John, give us an update on the finance committee, please.
Thank you, Tall. First of all, I just want to say congratulations on a job well done for us for 2022. You studied the ship, and we've done a tremendous amount of things here so thank you very much for everything you've done for us here at the City of Fishers. Moving on to Finance Committee, we met last Wednesday. Items on the agenda tonight that we've recommended for approval: item 8B, transferring funds; item 8C, voiding some outstanding checks; and on the regular agenda, item 9, regarding a amendment to a project agreement; item 10, item 11. We also spent some time talking about State Road 37, 141st Street interchange. And we also took some time as well to talk about our debt structure and where our bonds are at. So, and Lisa's going to update everything as of 12/31 and have some documents for the Budget and Finance Committee so we can track our debt. We do have, we've got about $330 million of debt on our books, which is a lot, but to the west it's $1 billion. So there you go. We're in a great shape financially as a community. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you. And then Selena, the Rules Committee update.
The Rules Committee met last week, and there were positions that were expiring, where the terms of those individuals were expiring for the non-standing committees. The committee met. The administration had contacted those individuals. All of those individuals were interested in maintaining those positions. The committee voted to allow those people to maintain their positions with those non-standing committees. I think those non-standing, that list is attached to the agenda item. If you click on that to
Okay.
see that.
Thank you very much. Moving on to.
Will you entertain a question?
Just go ahead.
If I may, the attachment that, and I know it said draft on it, so maybe it's not complete, but it did seem like the committee did move it forward. A couple notes. There was a vacancy on that list, so I want to flag that because it's not complete then all the seats aren't filled. There also looked like there were some errors about, like there were a few names that I thought I knew. Last year we had appointed to the position that had a multi-year term. So I'm just flagging those. It looks like there are some errors. So I don't know if you need to review that again, because my understanding is then it goes to the full council in January.
Yes.
Also, I think one last thing, there was some confusion about if there were new applications received this year and if the city promoted those applications. So I just wanted to be sure we're doing a thorough job, so I just want to flag that for you.
If I can comment about the vacancy, if I recall, that's the River Point PUD that's got a vacancy. I think I am part of that PUD. I think it's met once in how many? 10 years? Once in 10 years. So just as a point of clarification on that.
Was there a BZA one too? Fall Creek BZA?
If it was, it would be their appointment if there was.
Oh.
It wouldn't be ours.
No, but the BZA, the Fire Merit, and Park Advisory, I thought was supposed to be on the list. I don't know. I just found some discrepancies, and I just want to flag that for the committee so they take a deeper dive before we meet again.
Well, we'll take another review of it prior to the January meeting.
All right, moving on to item 7, the department reports. The health department report is always found on the Fishers website. You're welcome to click those links and that report. The engineering report, is there someone giving a report for that, or is that just another one that's
Just
attached? Okay, it's attached to the agenda online. You're welcome to look at that. Moving on to the consent agenda, do I have a motion? Motion by Pete,
I'll second.
second by Selena, and then we need to do a roll call. Not on consent? Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We're on item 9, R121922C, a resolution approving First Amendment to the project agreement by and between 96th Street investors.
Thank you. For the record, Megan Baumgartner. I'm the Director of Community and Economic Development. The item on the amendment is just a clarification on a definition that was included in the first version of the project agreement that Council unanimously approved in February. And it was just some redundant language that wasn't consistent with the commitments within the agreement. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve? So moved. Motion by Pete. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by John. Open it up for discussion for questions or comments in council. With none, can we have a roll call vote?
Todd Zimmerman,
Aye.
John Weingart,
Aye.
Pete Peterson,
Yes.
Cecilia Coble,
Aye.
Brad DeRaymer, Selena Stoller,
Aye.
Jocelyn Vare,
Aye.
Crystal Newman,
Aye.
David Giffel.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to item 10, R121922B, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Fishers, Indiana, approving certain matters in connection with the amendment to the declaratory resolution for Consolidated Fishers.
For the record, Lisa Bradford, City Controller. The item before you is related to a parcel of land on 116th Street between Charleston Crossing and kind of the Chatham Tap and the strip mall right there. So at the time when the land was annexed into the city, it was the intent to put it into the downtown TIF district. And for a variety of reasons, when that EDA came up, we just missed putting it into the TIF district. And so as we were reviewing this year, we realized that its intent was to be in the TIF district. So we started that process. So what this does is really kind of regulate the procedural step to make sure that that land is in the TIF district for whatever eventual development will come onto it.
All right, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Pete, a second by Selena. Any, open up for questions or comments from council? With none, take a roll call, please.
Todd Zimmerman.
Aye.
John Weingart.
Aye.
Pete Peterson.
Yes.
Cecilia Coble.
Yes.
Brad DeRaymer. Selena Stoller.
Aye.
Jocelyn Vare.
Aye.
Crystal Newman.
Aye.
David Giffel.
Aye.
Right.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to item 11, 121922, an ordinance of the Common Council establishing certain opioid settlement funds.
So the city was part of the opioid settlement that was administered predominantly by the state. So just recently, the state came out with its estimated distributions for each municipality, for cities, towns, counties. And so the money predominantly goes to communities or counties that can prove very direct harm from opioids, but then you can also prove that you are tangentially harmed, and so those affect your distributions. So for the city of Fishers, as a tangential kind of applicant, we are going to receive about $84,000 over the life of the distribution, and then about $270 that's restricted. So what this item before you does is allow us to set up the funds that is mandated by the state to receive the money. So there's one fund for the unrestricted portion and then another fund for the restricted portion. And so the funds start this year and go through, it's estimated 2038. So this year we received are going to receive just under $14,000 in unrestricted and about $57,000 in restricted. And as we kind of get this money, we receive it, we're going to look at what we can use the restricted funds on, and that will be an item that will probably be a 2023 discussion as we start to accumulate these. And as it's just setting up the ordinance to receive the funds, we would ask that you suspend the rules and pass on first reading.
Motion to suspend the rules and approve on first reading.
I'll second.
Second.
Okay, motion by Pete to suspend the rules, second by Cecilia. Open that up for questions or comments.
Yeah, the only comment I'll make is Chair of the Budget Finance. This is just a procedural step to set up these accounts to receive this money. Otherwise, if we don't do it, we don't get the money.
Right. We don't
And it's
have-
not significant dollars, but at least we still have to account for it properly
yeah.
in various restricted and unrestricted funds in accordance with
Yeah,
the
State
rules
Board
that
of
set forth. Okay.
Do we have any idea as to what type of restrictions are going to be put on those restricted funds? I know we may not know all the nuances of it yet.
We're aware of those per the settlement, but we'll, honestly, we're gonna sit down with the public safety team and public health team, and then we'll come back to the finance committee at some point. To Lisa's point, you know, $50,000 is not an insignificant sum of money, but it's also not an amount of money that you can go run out and do something transformative with. So, you know, this will roll out over 18 years, so we got a little time here to kind of think through what we want to do. But appreciate your cooperation in setting up the funds so that we can receive it.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so the motion is to suspend the rules by Pete, second by Cecilia. Roll call, please.
Todd Zimmerman.
Aye.
John Weingart.
Aye.
Pete Peterson.
Yes.
Cecilia Coble.
Aye.
Brad DeRaymer. Selena Stoller. Jocelyn Vare. Crystal Newman,
Aye.
David Giffel,
Aye.
Okay, then.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion by Pete. Do I have a second? Second by Selena. All those or go ahead and roll call. I'm sorry.
Todd Zimmerman,
Aye.
John Weingart,
Aye.
Pete Peterson,
Yes.
Cecile Coble,
Aye.
Brad DeReamer,
Aye.
Selena Stoller,
Aye.
Jocelyn Vare,
Aye.
Crystal Newman,
Aye.
David Giffel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item 12, R121922D, a resolution approving an interlocal agreement with Hamilton County concerning the reconstruction of Cumberland Road from 106th Street to 116th Street.
Good evening, President Zimmerman, members of the council. For the record, Chris Greisel here reviewing an interlocal agreement for the reconstruction of Cumberland Road between 106th and 116th Street. As this council is well familiar, from time to time, we bring interlocal agreements when the city and county are working together in conjunction on a major road project, or one authority is expressing some of their reserve powers in the other authority's jurisdiction. Here, the reconstruction project, it's a single lane in each direction with a boulevard, and we're adding pedestrian facilities on both the east and west side of the roadway. The county is contributing 100% of the local match proponent for the bridge reconstruction, and they're contributing about 23% of the local match for the roadway portion, and that represents the proportional amount of roadway that is within the county's jurisdiction today. With regards to the schedule, tree clearing for utility relocation is going to begin in the spring of 2023. Utility relocation will begin immediately after tree clearing is complete, and then the road bridge reconstruction will occur in late 2023, early 2024. The county's executed this interlocal agreement, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
All right. First, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Pete, second by John. Open up for questions or comments from council.
Any federal money in that?
Yes.
There is. If you go to the back of the exhibit of the interlocal agreement, there's actually a cost breakdown of 80% federal, 20% local match, and then that local match is then further broken down between what Fishers is taking on and then what the county's taking on.
Thanks.
Anyone else with questions or comments?
Brad, do you want to see this? I do have a hard copy.
No,
You-
it's
you're
fine.
good?
I just, as an ex-mayor, I've dealt with the federal government, and I just was wondering.
Got it.
Anytime we can get money from them, it's a good thing.
Chris,
Lots of stories.
Yeah.
if I recall correctly, there was actually, public input on, or a public hearing on this, probably a couple of years ago.
Yes.
On this, and it's kind of an interesting tract of road, because one side is unincorporated Fall Creek, and the other side is Fisher, so having this interlocal with the bridges, everything kind of makes sense, but there was input and there was conversation.
That's correct. Thank you for bringing that up.
Anyone else with questions or comments? Okay, we have a motion by Pete, a second by John. Can we have a roll call, please?
Todd Zimmerman,
Aye.
John Weingart,
Aye.
Pete Peterson,
Yes.
Cecilia Coble,
Aye.
Brad DeReamer,
Aye.
Selena Stoller,
Aye.
Jocelyn Vare,
Aye.
Crystal Newman,
Aye.
David Giffel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to item 13, 121922A, a request to approve voluntary annexation of 9.99 acres, known as River Ridge.
Yes, Megan Vukovic with Director of Planning and Zoning. So this first item is for voluntary annexation. This is first reading and a public hearing. So this is River Ridge. It's just located off of Allisonville Road.
Okay. We're going to open this up for public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this item and this item alone, step forward to the podium, state your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Seeing no one stepping forward, I'll close the public hearing. And first reading. Thank you very much. Item 14, 121922B, a request to approve a voluntary annexation of .59 acres known as toll property.
Yes, so this is first reading and a public hearing for another annexation. This is for a property near 116th and Oleo.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to open this up for public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, step forward to the podium, state your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Nobody stepping forward. Close the public hearing of first reading. Thank you. On to item 15, 121922C, a request to approve a voluntary annexation of .86 acres known as McDermott property.
Yep, so same as the last two, first reading and public hearing for a single-family residence that is located at Timberland Lane or Road and west of Hague Road.
Okay, once again, we'll open this up for public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak, step forward and state your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Seeing no one stepping forward, I'll close the public hearing.
Have first reading.
First reading. Moving on to item 16, 121922E, consideration of a text amendment to the Unified Development Ordinance for variance cleanup items.
Yes, so this is first reading for another text amendment to the UDO. Really, our staff has been identifying really minor revisions that have been needed to just clean up some of the language of our Unified Development Ordinance, and so it's the end of the year, and we thought this would be a good time to bring this forward.
Okay, do we have any, before we have a call for first reading, does anybody have any questions or comments on this?
I do. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Nope.
I have two. I think both are just more about the rationale behind the changes. One is Section 5.7.2.c, home occupation. This addition was the property owner must use the residential dwelling as their primary place of residence. Can you share that a little bit and like why that was added?
Yeah, so I can't remember the exact language of what it stated before, but that's always been the intent of the policy, is that for someone, in order to have a home occupation, you have to use it as your primary place of residence. And I think the way it was worded previously was something to effect of the person lived in the home. And so that's really just providing clarity that it must be their primary place of residence. And so that would be in an instance if you had an in-home daycare in a residential home, we'd want you to live in that home and not just use it as a business.
Okay.
It would actually need to be a residential structure.
Okay, so you're saying like that was the original intent, this language specifies that.
Correct.
I have one other question. Section 3, portable classrooms. Portable classrooms will require a temporary user permit, and I'm aware of that, and the fees get waived. I believe that's elsewhere in the UDO, but the addition here today was portable classrooms are permitted for no more than 2 years, and that surprised me. Can you share with us more about that?
Yeah, so previously, the way the temporary use regulations were written is it would only allow portable classrooms for 6 months. And I think that that was an inaccuracy in the UDO because it permitted portable classrooms, but it limited all temporary uses to 6 months. And so staff felt that that wasn't necessarily enough time to put in a portable classroom, and so we put it as 2 years.
So what does that mean for HSC schools or a private school that requires after 2 years that portable classroom has to be removed, or that's a new permit process?
So this would mostly apply to places of worship. HSC schools
Oh.
is an exempt entity, and so typically
Okay.
portable classrooms under these regulations don't apply.
Okay.
And so, but yes, they could either go to the BZA and seek a variance if they needed it longer than the 2 years, or after 2 years, I mean, really that would be the amount of time that they're permitted. So they'd have to seek a variance if they
Okay,
needed longer.
so HSC schools, this does not apply to you. And for a church or a private school or whatever, there's a pathway if they need it to use a portable classroom longer.
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? First reading?
Well, I'll give it a first reading, but I just want to commend Megan and her department. I work very closely with Megan on the planning commission. She's done an absolute banner job cleaning up a lot of this stuff, because you look at any laws that are written by any kind of governmental body, they're always wrought with little omissions and errors all the time, and you guys have just been terrific at finding those and really putting some clarity to it. So I certainly appreciate all the effort.
Yeah, thank you.
We have no unfinished or new business. We're going to go ahead and open up for community comment. This is an opportunity for you to speak. You can speak on any item you wish to for 3 minutes. So you can step forward, state your name and address for the record. You will have 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening. My name is Tara Spivey, and my address is 11039 Fall Creek Road, Fishers, Indiana. And I'm here with a twofold objective tonight. So I'd like to just present the problem at hand, and that is my husband and I moved into our home, and I have a couple of pictures of the problem in 2020, right, during the pandemic. And there was a project for a sewer lift station to take place, which was not disclosed to us at that time. Wasn't disclosed to the previous homeowners either. The project is of large magnitude. It is to essentially place a very large lift station next to an existing older one that needs repair, but this one's much larger, and place a parking lot in our front property. It is in the right of way by citizens. So I've put some representative photos here. If you can see, there's a very, very destructive amount of tree loss to this property. They will be cutting down 30 mature trees that provide security and privacy to our home in order to conduct this project, which, might I add, we very much respect the utility, but it is also citizens' obligation to conduct their projects with respect to the community and try to minimize the amount of damage. So there is a very opportune common area which sits in nobody's front yard. So essentially you can see this is our home with a very steep slope. So of course some of our big large scale concerns are as they uproot our tree system, which holds back water, and erosion will certainly affect this property. This is not what we signed up for. And while I respect the utility, we all are afforded a much more luxurious lifestyle having these utilities. I think when there's a common area sitting that affects nobody's home, and even all of the gentlemen who have been out to the site have agreed, like, that would be a great spot, and they're definitely on our side. It's just that this hasn't been approved to be the site from people higher than them. And I'm here for help. Perhaps somebody in this room could be helpful to my home and my family. And I also think that there should be an ordinance in place that when projects such as this affect an adjacent property owner, it should be disclosed to the property owner. In fact, if at June of 2020 this were known to us, it would have influenced our decision not to have a parking lot, not to have, you know, the mature trees cut down, which is my safe haven when I come home from a long day's work, and our family's joy and our heart. And that's why we're here, hoping to perhaps pique the attention of someone who could perhaps nudge this in the right direction from us, and perhaps work on some ordinance to notify property owners.
Thank you very much. Is there any, Mayor, if there's any?
Because I've talked to, you're in my district, by the way, and I may have even spoken to you guys. I'm not really sure. I talked to most of the homeowners around there during this process. I've had lengthy conversations with Jason Taylor on this topic, and, you know, we're dealing with an outside utility citizen. So, you know, and as the mayor and everybody over here will tell you, our hands get really handcuffed when dealing with that, but we can put as much pressure on there as we can. Jason and I were in alignment as to where to have that thing go, which I think is in the parcel you're describing. So
Yes,
I don't know where the process is, but Jason should have it flagged on his deal to let me know if that ever was going to start going in a different place. So I'm glad you're here. I'll restart my energies to doing that, because I kind of left it alone to hear from our engineering department before I got involved in it. But I certainly, I've walked that area. I don't know that I've actually been in your backyard, maybe from the water, but not in your backyard.
You're welcome there.
Yeah. So
Don't say that. We'll all end
yeah.
up
So
there.
but I have a full understanding what that entire neighborhood is dealing with that particular project. So I want to try to be as helpful as I possibly can, but maybe the mayor can then go ahead and speak to the fact of, you know, how we deal with that utility when it's not ours.
Yeah, I think in terms of passing an ordinance, Chris would be able to talk a little bit about that. The state tends to prohibit your ability to pass laws on publicly regulated utilities, so I don't know what we could do from a legal perspective on the ordinance side, but I know we have a meeting scheduled coming up to talk about this, and I know various people from our organization have had conversations with citizens, and we need to continue to have that dialogue and try to push in any way that we can to try to help get that accomplished. Obviously, in these conversations, moving it to the other side of the road generates another group of people who don't want it, but it's the lesser of two evils in this scenario by far.
Certainly is. This
Yeah.
is like I know that you're really evaluating, this is kind of an overview and looking at it from a perspective that I think is very fair, because actually in the common area, nobody's facade of their home is not even a magnitude as close as our front door will be to this sewer, and nobody's on this as steep of a grade as our home is, and there's a road in between. And so and even if they have to cut down some of the mature trees in the common area, there's still going to be a row of mature trees, and then everybody else affected would be so much further set back. And there's even an entryway that makes it safer for workers from behind if they're doing something that entails, you know, a more intense access point aside from just a parking lot. It is absolutely just reassuring that you are listening to us tonight. This means a lot to us, and we've been trying to get to be heard for a long time. I actually have a couple of, maybe I'll just have this PowerPoint sent to the whole group, but it's got the survey and it's got some of the common area.
We have that now, so they'll be able to
Wonderful.
Work with that. Okay, thank you so much.
I look
Appreciate
forward
it.
to meeting with you
Yes.
here shortly, and we can talk through it and then see what we can do with citizens.
And I should say, I appreciate very much, and those in support in the audience, please rise.
And start chanting.
That's good. Yeah, right. Will do.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
All right. Anyone else wishing to speak, step forward, state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak.
My name is Michael Cole. I'm Tara Spivey's husband, 11039 Fall Creek. Not to beat a dead horse, but my wife's very humble. So she's actually dedicates her life to helping people in this community. She's a breast cancer surgeon and oncologist, so she has a very stressful job. And we bought this property thinking that it was going to be a place of peace and tranquility. And they're basically uprooting our privacy. So anybody walking by there, it's literally 60 feet from the road to our front door. And that lift station is going to be directly between the road and our front door. Literally, I'll be sitting in my living room looking out at a lift station and maintenance trucks doing work on a sewer thing. And as my wife stated, huge fan of utilities, don't like using buckets, so you know, it's nothing against utility, but as she stated, that common area is a cul-de-sac road with a pre-existing berm already established, and it's literally 50 feet south of the intended location now. So it's less than 150 feet to move that and not affect anybody's property directly, and we're just hoping that, and appreciate you guys understanding and looking into this matter a little bit further.
Thank you very much.
It's a water, it's not sewer, right?
No, it's a lift station. It's a sewer
It's
lift station.
sewer, okay.
So right now, there's an existing one on our property, but it's small. It's about 3-foot diameter. This one they're intending to build is a 10-foot diameter, 30-foot deep hole. Our home sits 30 feet down on a level. We're on a cement pad. I'm not an engineer. I don't really know anything about ground movement, but just a layman, I would think that drilling a hole that large is going to affect the ground a little bit. So we're not only worried about aesthetically, but we're worried about the structural integrity of our home. So, you know, that's all I got.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak, step forward, state your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak.
I'd like to add a comment to those two, please. My name is Jason Engel. I'm at 5790 Gerfalcon in the neighboring community of Carmel. It's not lost on me that most of you said that you could look into this, and I think everybody appreciates that. I'm a real estate broker, and I helped this family acquire that property, and I'm familiar with it. I've been out to the home a couple of times since these notifications have gone out. And just for context, the number of trees that would be taken down, number one, can be avoided by going back to this other primary original location, and I know we talked about that. But when you think about that, and then you think about if you can take time to go to this property and see the trees that they plan on taking down, if it were a private homeowner that was doing it, I can almost guarantee that it would be attempted to be stopped. The amount of trees from Fall Creek Boulevard to the cove that they are on, it will be a huge open viewing area, totally different than what that community typically fights for. So I just wanted to give that context about the tree removal and also focusing on this other location that appears to be an option. And just thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else wishing to speak, step forward, state your name and address for the record. 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening. Mike Colby, 7105 Cold Lake Drive. I have two issues I want to speak to. The engineering report that was on the agenda was not discussed in detail. However, I read that engineering report. I was pleased to see that we're having some movement on private roads. Unfortunately, the private roads are Britton Park Trade Center and Publishers Business Parks. And I was under the impression over the last 10 years that some consideration would be given to Fisher's Crossing and Fisher's Landing. That may still be the case, but this project is going to go forward in spring of '23. So action is going to be taken. I know there's been some discussion on the Barrett Law and how much the developers or the landowners are going to have to pay, and that's still being worked out. So maybe my direct question is, what's the status with getting the private roads taken care of over in my community?
I don't know if we have, do you have an update from Jason on that?
No, I mean, I think the report speaks for itself, Mike. I don't have a specific answer as to where in line your two roads fall into. I know we're actively pursuing both Parkside Drive and Publishers Drive. As you know, interest rates are going up. There's a complexity to the calculation of the properties, and that's what was conveyed in the memo, and that's what we're pursuing right now at this time.
So you're saying that you don't know where we are with our streets being taken care of, or it just isn't being discussed, and this is something that's been discussed?
What I'm saying is that we are focusing our attention on Britton Park Trade Center and Publishers Drive as our first roads in the Barrett Law process, and the rest of the roads are still being evaluated.
Well, I'm disappointed. I've discussed this, as all of you know, for the last 10, 12 years or so, and I was kind of under the impression, I'm led to believe that we would be considered early on in the process. So,
Well, I don't think that you're not. I mean, that we're talking about 2 roads so far, Mike, that we've started that have gotten to this point. That doesn't mean that there isn't legal research being done or contemplating how we move forward. But that's 2 roads out of many that we've just gotten to this point. So,
and I understand that,
Yeah.
and I'm glad to see you've gotten
Yeah.
some movement in that area relative to the Barrett Law and how it's
Right.
being interpreted. So my direct question again is, where are we in that process? And how can I get that answer?
I think from my perspective, those 4 roads are the 4 roads that we are focused on. So Britton Park and
It's Publishers Business
Road.
Park
Yeah.
and Britton Park and Trade
So
Center.
those 2 roads, we had an opportunity with the business association to move those along and progress those quicker, so we moved on those faster.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that the other 2 roads aren't still a priority for us, and I think we're going to learn a lot as we go through this Barrett process that we can apply and speed up the next 2 roads, which would, I think, logically be the 2 roads that you're concerned with on the Allisonville Road corridor.
All right. I have 3 minutes, so I want to try to move on. The next one I have is, I've come to many meetings when you guys discuss PUDs, and typically the PUD, the impervious surface in a PUD is 50 to 55%. And I've been to BZA meetings where citizens have come in and asked for a variance to increase the impervious surface. I've been trying to do research to determine exactly what the calculation looks like. You have a document, frequently asked questions on the adjustment stormwater fee. This was a document that was put together about 10 years or so ago when the stormwater fees were adjusted. And in there it says that rates are determined by the contribution each property makes in the total amount of stormwater and the stormwater system can handle. It's calculated by the average square footage of the impervious surface. So basically what happens is you have the impervious surface taken against the total square foot, and the formula has a 35% amount that's typically put in residential, and then it'll vary based upon, this thing has a couple of different classifications. You have condominiums versus single family and so forth.
Yep.
And then the other one is if you have a commercial development, they obviously have more impervious surfaces and their rates are calculated. So I guess my question is there any attempt to take a look at the calculations that are used for stormwater fees and those properties that are getting the 50 and 55% impervious surface as a community, as a home, should pay a higher stormwater fee, one would think. And I know this is, I'm laying that out on you tonight. Whether you do anything with it or not is up to you. But I think it's unfair for that to continue where you have people who are getting the 35% amount and that impacts on the amount of money going into the stormwater budget. and that's a pretty big budget.
So I think these questions of user fees, so to speak, so take sewer, there's always been an age-old argument. If you have a home with 6 bedrooms and
Yeah.
5 kids, you should be charged more because you're going to use the sewer more so than someone who's single who lives in a home.
There's a way to do that. Water in, water out.
Right.
Some of the communities
So-
will do that.
Yeah, so I think, but that discussion would require a pretty in-depth analysis, and
Right.
if council wanted to look at that at rate study time, I certainly
Well, this is not
welcome it.
sewer, this is stormwater.
No, but even a stormwater adjustment where you're now gonna calculate it based on the square footage of impervious surface per parcel is a very big conversation that residents, there'd be people adversely impacted as well as people that would do better, so
And I
that
think-
analysis would have
I
to.
think that's a burden you can put on the developer when they come in and say, you had the two, what is the current
Yeah.
thing?
I think
zoning,
unfortunately.
And then you got the PUD, and when
Yeah.
they say 25% or 55%, then I think it's incumbent upon them to say, okay, we've calculated, give them the formula, and then let them determine what the. what the
I think
figure should be.
unfortunately, you're talking about 94% of the land has already been developed, so you're gonna be changing the way you calculate the stormwater fees for every homeowner that currently exists in Fishers, and that has financial ramifications both for the individual and for the city, and so we would any conversation like that would require a pretty in-depth study to kind of go through.
I agree, and that's what this
Yeah.
study did, because the stormwater fee was actually rolled up into the sewer at one time.
Yep.
And there was so much.
Right, we broke it
expenses.
out.
You broke it out.
Yep.
And you had a company to come in and they do ERUs and, all
Yep,
that
EDUs
stuff
and all that.
involved.
Well, as Councilmember Dreamer said, it's run like a business, and we probably do need to reevaluate both sewer and stormwater. We need to continue to evaluate those rates and look at how we bill those. So I do think that that's probably on the horizon to study that and evaluate what the appropriate path forward is.
I appreciate that. I hope it doesn't fall by the wayside like Fisher's Crossing did.
All right, thank you very much.
Merry Christmas,
Anyone
Mike.
else wishing to speak, step forward, state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak.
All right, thank you, Fishers Council, for the opportunity to comment. My name's Steve Ladding, 10811 High Rock Court. I'm a 30-year resident of Fishers, past CPA, and current managing broker of Fishers Real Estate Brokerage Firm. I listened to the mayor's annual State of the City address and have concerns about its consideration of proposed rental restrictions, rental permitting, and rental caps. I feel this would be an extremely heavy-handed overreach. I know we don't have a proposal yet, by the city of Fishers. And it would really be an infringement on every property owner's rights who own property in Fishers. I have requested the source data from the mayor, and they are working on it. I know he put up quite a bit of statistics and so forth. I'm really eager to get the source data behind that and really see, and maybe I can come up with some other recommendations or what have you, but I know that's in the works. Really looking forward to getting that so that I can do my research. Among other things, I would like to see, if Section 8 housing apartments are maybe included in this database as well. And also maybe this is driven from a handful of neighborhoods, a handful of large investors that are causing the problem. But I'd really like to get into the details to see, what the problems are, and so forth. I do think all the homeowners really shouldn't be penalized for actions of a few bad actors. And I think the big frustration is a lot of out-of-state investors coming in. You got maybe homeowners associations that aren't doing their job and putting in violations and so forth, and holding the homeowners accountable as well. But I do feel this broad. We still don't have the proposal, but it appears to be like a broad blanketed approach in trying to solve the perceived problem really could have unintended consequences. And there's really a lot of them, but a few of them that come to mind would just be discrimination against minorities. A lot of minorities cannot get a mortgage, so they're forced to rent. And if we put restrictions there, we're going to limit the supply. And right now we've already got a short supply, as we looked at earlier. Also limiting prospective residents and trying out the area. That happens quite often, especially in Del Webb. People want to come into the area, they want to check out Del Webb, they'll rent a house. Oh, I like it here, I'm going to go ahead and buy. as well. You know, we really don't want to limit supply there. Also limiting the owner's ability to rent their home during a down market. We saw that in 2008, where, you know, somebody would buy a house, you know, back then, 200,000, now it's worth 120,000. They lose their job. They've got to unload it. They're underwater. So, you know, if you take their ability to be able to rent it, the house is going to go into foreclosure, and we don't want that as well. So we really got to look into the pros and cons of all this as well. And also, you know, we don't want to hamper, you know, there are property management businesses in Fishers. We don't want to affect their viability and limiting their supply as well. And also, I think a big thing is if you do put rental restrictions out there, I mean, rental rates have grown significantly over the last couple of years. I think over the last 10 to 15 years, they've stayed stable. Just like home values have gone up significantly, rental rates have gone up significantly as well. And if we put rental restrictions in that limit the supply, what's going to happen to those rates? Supply and demand, they're going to skyrocket, which will make it unaffordable to live, you know, in the city. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to receiving that source data and being involved in working with the council and the mayor, you know, and hopefully coming up with some good strategies and ideas to take care of, you know, the problem that's perceived.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Anyone else wishing to speak, step forward, state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak.
I know I've been up once, and I just want to make some comments relative to this individual's. You know, I'm an HOA president, and our homeowners association in October changed our covenants restricting rentals. It was a very, very well received, and a large majority of our homeowners did that, and so we have a covenant right now that it's up to the board to approve, and there's certain conditions. You have to live in the home 2 years, you have to have a hardship, death in the family, or something along that line. It's a 1-year limitation. So if it looks like the city is going to run into some legal issues with having a city, I'd be happy to share our covenants. It's been reviewed by a very reputable attorney, and it was approved by our community.
Thank you, Mike.
May I?
Anyone else wishing to speak, step forward and state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak. Seeing nobody else, I'm going to close public comment.
I would just say, Councilman Zimmerman, you know, we've had a history here of, I think, taking a very thoughtful approach to public policy issues, big questions such as this. Our intent here is not to be punitive, nor to do anything draconian. I do think there's an appropriate measure of regulation that is appropriate for the long-term sustainability of our city. And I really do look forward to having the discussion. We want to be transparent, so we advertise that this is something that we're going to be looking at. And we look forward in the first quarter of next year really rolling out kind of the rationale, the proposal, how it would operate, how it would function, and really with the multiple stakeholders in mind. The business owner in Fishers that maybe has a few properties, doing the least amount of burden on that individual while at the same time maintaining the integrity of a neighborhood or a resident. Also want to put those stakeholders in mind. So I think over the next 3 to 4 months, we'll have a very thoughtful discussion about this, and no one's going to swoop in here in the middle of the 11th hour and force something through that's going to have unintended consequences. That's not been the history of our policy making here in the city, and it won't be on this issue either.
Well, thank you. You okay? Anything else I'm missing?
I would say just everyone stay warm. It's going to be a rough Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and watch out for our DPW trucks. Leave them alone. Stay away from them. Allow them to do their work. And if anybody hits your mailbox and it was a tan Yukon, it wasn't me. It was somebody else.
I'm going to make a motion to adjourn and wish everybody a Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. We're adjourned. Thank you very much.